Hi everyone. Today I am going to show you how to make this autumn themed slimline card using the pumpkin patch stamp set from Honeybee Stamps. This stamp set was released in fall of 2019. And I don't know, there's been a little bit of a chill in the air in the mornings in Illinois where I live the past few days, and it just got me thinking to autumn and the change of seasons, and I just really felt like making this autumn themed card today. So I thought I would come on over to YouTube and share it with you. So I am just going to stamp the images of the pumpkins across the slimline card. This pumpkin patch stamp set is perfect for making a slimline card because you have 5 or 6 different shaped pumpkins and they just fit really well, as you can see, across the slimline background. So for my color palette, I have it in the upper right hand corner. So if you want to try to duplicate this card on your own using these same exact colors, you can do so. I'll also have a larger blow up of the color palette sheet at the end of the video in case this is too difficult for you to see if you're watching on a small device. So to start this card, I started off with the background. So I laid down some water first, so just clear water, and then I applied my color on top of that to make like a nice wash for the background. The colors are pretty diluted, and I used that Payne's Blue Gray in the left side, the Serpentine on the right side, and then I'm going to add a little Nickel Azo yellow right here in the center to just brighten things up and make it look like there's a little bit of a glow behind the pumpkins. And then I'm just going to drop a little bit more, some more concentrated Payne's Blue Gray on the left side there, just so that it can kind of dry and just make some interesting patterns. And I'm just cleaning up the excess water on the sides. I did apply my heat tool to the background, cut that part out just so you didn't have to watch my camera go in and out of focus as I was drying the background. And then we're going to start on the pumpkins. For the front row of pumpkins, we're going to use some orangey and reddish yellow tones. And then for the pumpkins in the back, we're going to use some moon glow, actually, which is a really, really pretty like gray bluish purple tone, and it's just going to look so pretty in the background when we get to that. But for these first pumpkins, I just apply like a really light wash to start, and I'm being careful to leave some little parts of the cardstock or of the watercolor paper that doesn't get touched by the water, because I like those little white highlights that it adds. It just makes the painting in the end look really, really pretty and rustic. So I'm just going to paint this front row of pumpkins because none of them are touching each other, so you don't have to worry about the color bleeding. And I'm just having fun. I'm applying my lightest wash to the center of the pumpkins, and then I'll add some darker tones to the outside, either of that same color or maybe a little darker of a color. So the centers of the pumpkin are either Aussie Red Gold or Nickel Azo Yellow. And then for the details or the little ridge areas, I'll use my raw sienna or sepia there. And then for the leaves, I have 3 different tones here, but I don't know that you need all of those. Using either the green apatite or a little bit of the Nickel Azo yellow with some of the green apatite there. And then, of course, we have our serpentine that we can use for the leaves as well, that we use for the background. For the stems of the pumpkins, I'm using sepia. And I'm just going to add a base coat, and then we'll go and add some more details later on those stems. And yeah, I'm just leaving that little first coat there. I dried everything off, and now we can start working on the back pumpkins. So I'm going to add a light wash to start, I started with some sepia for the light wash on the pumpkins, thinking that I was going to make them brown. But then in the end, I decided for my second coat to use the moon glow, which I think just really works really, really well with all of the pretty muted fall colors in this little painting here. So now I'm going to start painting. This is my second coat onto our front pumpkins, and I'm using a smaller brush here and more concentrated color for the second coat, because this is where we're going to start adding in the details. And my technique for this is I'll lay down like a line of color and then I'll wash my brush off and then blend that color out towards the center of the pumpkin, or the center of the area where I'm working. So it just leaves like a kind of cool, funky, rustic, streaky look. And you can see that here. So I laid down that line of that's the Perylene Maroon. And then I'm just going to dip my brush in the water and then blend it all out a little bit. And then I'm going to add some sepia here as well towards the bottom of the pumpkin, like the parts that would be in shadow, like that left-hand side of the pumpkin. And then we're going to take our brighter, like Aussie red gold wash that I have on the side and add that to the center. Still being careful to leave some little white streaks there just because it gives a lot of interest to the painting. And the thing about watercolors, I feel it's a very personal process for everyone. Everyone has a little bit of a different way that they go about it. For me, basically what I'll do is I'll add a very, very light wash for my first coat of whatever the base color is for my focal image. And then I will let that dry completely. When you're watercoloring, you always want to make sure that your layers dry completely in between applying the layers. Otherwise, the paper just breaks down a little bit and the color won't flow so nicely. So for my second coat, that's usually where I'll start applying the details. And sometimes if I want even more detail, I will go and apply a third coat. So I basically move from like bigger brushes and lighter washes of color in the first coat to smaller colors, smaller brushes and more concentrated colors for the second coat. And I just kind of keep getting more concentrated with the color and smaller with the brushes as I add the layers. And I find that technique works for me. So now we're going to work on these other two pumpkins on the right side. And I am using some concentrated Aussie red gold here for the little ridges of the pumpkin. And then I'll blend that towards the middle with some just clear water on my brush. And then at this point, I decide that the pumpkins are a little too bright, or at least that pumpkin is. So I'll add a little bit of the sepia, I think, to the bottom, just to kind of dull the tone down a little bit, mute it a bit. Actually, I don't think that's sepia. I think that is the raw sienna, and then the sepia on the very bottom, like in the shadowy area. So when you're doing your own painting, what I would say is I think if you stick with this color palette, you'll get really good results. So just have fun with it, and don't worry about following the colors exactly as I'm doing here, because with watercolor, I feel like every painting is a little bit different and the colors move and flow a little differently for each painting. You have to kind of just pay attention to what the scene is calling out for and just kind of go with it. So that's part of why I went with this little red pumpkin in the lower right hand corner. I just thought the scene needed a little pop of color. So I made that little pumpkin in the front and the lower right with the Perylene Maroon. And then to tie the scene together, I'm going to add a little bit of that shade to this pumpkin right here that we're coloring, focusing that red on the top. And that's really, I feel, the key to watercolor. It's, so much about feeling like what you're feeling and just kind of going with the flow. So I definitely urge you to, do that when you're making your own painting. Just have fun and let the colors take you wherever they take you. Okay, now we'll fill in the leaves here. So I'm just using, again, more concentrated color and a smaller brush because it's my second layer. And if you're watercoloring and something comes out and you don't quite like it, you can always just take a paper towel and just mop it up very, very quickly or blot it. And as long as you're using a mostly transparent color, it should come up pretty easily. So that's kind of like your eraser in watercoloring, is just kind of blotting up whatever color you just applied immediately before it dries, and you should be able to get most of it up. So now I'm using the Moon Glow on these little pumpkins in the back, and I really adore this color, and I don't think to use it that often, but when I do, I'm always so happy. It's just this beautiful like purpley, brown, gray, blue color. It's got so many different tones. I think it's a mixture of maybe 4 different pigments by Daniel Smith, and it's just gorgeous. So I also decided to make the little ground where the pumpkins are sitting a little dark too. So I'm going to add that moon glow to the bottom of the scene as well. And I think it's just going to make it look real pretty. So yeah, so I'm just taking some concentrated moon glow, adding it to the bottoms there. And then I just blend that out towards the top of that pumpkin with just some clear water. And I'm just going to fix up the bottom of the scene. And now we're going to add another coat to our stem. So I'm just taking more concentrated sepia here and applying it to like the right side of the stems, leaving some of it. Whenever you put your second coat on, you do want to leave some of the first coat visible so that it looks like you've got different tones going on. Now I'm adding some little like squiggly branches to our pumpkins. If you don't want to draw these in, the Honeybee stamp set has these little squiggles that you can just stamp on. And if you're going to stamp an ink on this, I would probably use Distress inks here. So to stamp the images, I use Distress ink in antique linen. And now I'm adding some spatter with just the paint that I have on my palette over there. So some of the blues, some of the greens, and I'm just going to spatter all over the painting and then take off our painter's tape and then add the Honeybee Slimline die to our block. I cut that out on my die cutting machine, and now we're going to use this sentiment from, I think it's the Autumn Blessings stamp set from Honeybee Stamps from last year. And I'm going to stamp it with black VersaFine ink, and we're going to stamp it twice because it's difficult to get a good impression with just one try with this thick watercolor paper by Arches. And the paper that I'm using the Arches cold press watercolor blocks, and this size is 3.8 inches by 9.8 inches, and it works perfectly with the slimline dies. And what's great about using the watercolor blocks is that you don't have to worry about your paper buckling as you're painting because it's all attached as a block. And then you just take a palette knife and you like unattach each sheet when you're done with your painting after it's fully dried. So I'm just going to add the little border that comes with a Honeybee Slimline die frame here, and then I'm going to add some liquid adhesive. Liquid adhesive is important to use here because we are using watercolor paper that may buckle with maybe a tape adhesive. So I thought I needed a really sturdy adhesive to keep this down to my card base. And that is it. So that is our card for today, everyone. Our Autumn Blessings fall themed card. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I really hope that you give this card a try. You can find the stamp set on Honeybee Stamps website. It is the Pumpkin Patch stamp set, and then the sentiment is from the Autumn Blessings mini stamp set. And then this is the palette that I used in case you had trouble seeing the little palette that was in the corner of the screen before. So not many colors, and they're beautiful, beautiful fall colors. All right. Thanks a lot, everyone. I will see you again soon in another video. Have a great day.